Well, there's nothing worse for a parent or carer than when your child is sick. But how do you know whether it's just a simple bug or it's time to book them in with the family doctor or something more serious?
Or they're just trying to get off school.
We'll see.
To time.
Well, Mum and infectious diseases physician Linny Fong is back to share her own knowledge and expertise with us. Good morning, Linny.
Morning.
You're a parent.
Yes.
But you're a doctor as well.
Yes.
So do you feel like your brain reverts to mum or to doctor or to both when your child is
Yeah,
sick?
no, that's a really good question. I think, first of all, it's so tricky being a parent or carer, and for me, that sort of doctor-mum brain just kind of switches into overgear, and sometimes, you know, I need help as to whether or not I'm being over the top or I'm, you know, downplaying things. So I think we all need help, and it's really hard to be objective when it's your own child.
Yeah, absolutely. What are the signs when you're feeling uneasy, when you're not too sure? I've been in this situation before.
Yeah.
What are the signs and what are the kind of markers we need to know?
I think, first of all, it's really important that you trust your instinct. I think, you know, what we know as doctors and healthcare professionals is you guys as parents are the experts in your own children, and so you know when things are a little bit off. So that's always our sort of first advice to all parents and carers. The other thing is really just kind of thinking about some of the subtle signs of, you know, maybe things that aren't quite right, and this is obviously age dependent, but, you know, for a younger child it might be that they're not feeding as well, or, you know, their appetite's down, they might be a bit more lethargic than usual, and they might just, you know, not have that sort of same level of energy, and their behaviour might be off, and then sometimes there might be a fever.
So my response, I think I'm probably too laid back. I'm always like, have you had a glass of water?
Oh, yeah.
Always turn to paracetamol,
Yes.
usually don't care, and then suddenly I'm like, oh my God, they're actually really sick. So you mentioned a fever.
Yes.
How can you tell, apart from what's the thermometer?
Yeah, so a thermometer is really key. I think the main thing with a fever is firstly that we talk about a fever being a temperature of over 38 degrees, and that's with a reliable thermometer, should I say. And then the other thing is just with a fever, there are lots of misconceptions around fever. So firstly, reassurance that fever in itself is not harmful. It's actually the body's response to fighting something, usually an infection. And then the other thing is that we, you know, a lot of people talk about the height of the fever, and it's not the height of the fever that we're worried about. What we worry about as healthcare professionals is what is actually causing the fever. So it's not, you know, the higher the number, the worse the infection. And also worth knowing that just because your child you know, doesn't have a fever doesn't mean that you don't have, you know, a right to be concerned. If there's something that's not quite right, it's worth getting checked out.
Such a good point. I mean, when I've been in emergency departments, you're a bit flustered, you're really nervous, you've got lots of usually absolutely beautifully lovely doctors and nurses coming with questions.
Yeah.
But what questions should you bring? What information should you bring to the doctor's office or to the emergency department?
Yeah, no, I like that, because certainly what's really helpful for us is if you've had time, you know, I say that, if you've had time to think about sort of what symptoms your child has had and perhaps how long they've had them for, and then think about also what you've tried and what's worked and what hasn't, and then also just kind of considering you know, what medications they're normally on and what vaccines they've had, so just so we can kind of get a good picture of what bugs may or may not be causing it, and you know, the signs and symptoms, and that timeline's really helpful for us as well.
Linny, this information is so useful for people because before we know it, I mean, there's already been lots of bugs over summer, but that season is about to begin.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, as always.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That is useful. That's one parenting area that I think I'm an absolute failure. My kids don't come to me for this.
Oh, okay.
They come to me for most things, but they know I'm just going to say, have you drunk some water? And it's always straight to mum.
Yeah, mums are pretty good, aren't they?
Sometimes. Let's go to one of our other stories, because TikTok says it's in the process of restoring service to US users after President-elect Donald Trump said he'd try to pause a federal law banning the app when he takes